Regularity in social meanings. What does this mean? This means that the meanings that we attach to languages are more or less regular within a given social context, unless there is a socio-political configuration itself. So, this becomes more clear if we think about the social system in terms of an ecological system. Now, what is an ecology or what is an ecological system? An ecological system is a system in which you see how different languages, how different groups interact and live with each other in terms of dominance or in terms of being subservient to others. So what is the hierarchy and how do they coexist together? Just like in a natural environment, there is an ecology. Similarly, in social systems also, an ecology is always maintained for the benefit of some or for the oppression of the others, but in any case, it is there. So if meanings attached to dialect are regular, always we say that dialect is sort of subservient to the standard language, then the speakers of the dialect and their relationship to those who are speaking a standard language will also be regular. Now, what are we saying? We are saying that there exists a correlation that we can establish through research between regional background of a person or a group, the reference group. The reference group is a group to which an individual actually identifies himself or herself with. So that person actually likes to be like them and they are the role models for them. So this role model group that somebody follows is the reference group of that person. So we are saying that regional background, for instance, of an individual, his or her reference group, and the niche occupied in the system, that is, how that person is actually positioned with others, similarly positioned within the society, there exists a correlation, and the language that they use will also be correlated to their own position. So in this socio-ecological system, in that small town in Norway, it was seen that occupations, depending on what kind of work was being undertaken, how they sort of determine their marriages, the spouses that they were choosing, if they were all local, their occupations, if they were all local, and if there was little interaction with somebody outside their businesses, and then the local affinity was much, much more stronger, and the emphasis or the pride in the dialect was also very strong. And similarly, if an individual sort of from that locale became educated, had a kind of an occupation that made him also to interact with those outside the locality, then the social network of that person might be sort of broader, and that affected his or her use of dialect or standard language, and also the shifting between standard and dialect. Now, having said that, please remember that language is strongly related to social networks. It's related to social networks because it is through the language that you sort of identify yourself with a group. And the languages can be the gatekeepers of certain social networks. You might be thinking, what is the significance of social networks and why are we emphasizing on them so much? Please remember that social networks are extremely important in upward social mobility, in the well-being and agency of a person, because depending on how many connections you have within the local, which we call bonding social capital you are, would mean that is the support you will have. Then in social network can also be seen as bridging social capital, a language that enables you to not only talk to the locals but also talk to someone who are beyond your locality. Then your prospects are widened or become more. And if you know, or somebody in the higher, in the government or people who have power, then you access what we call linking social capital, and that also comes through the use of that official language that you need to possess. So it's extremely important. So coming back to this context, what was happening was because the standard language was used for education. Children who got educated, who were educated, somehow used standard language a little bit more than the dialect, because although they needed to interact with the local population, most of them, because this was a small town, would move out and look for other opportunities in terms of occupation. And if you want to relate all this in to Pakistani context, you can easily identify how somebody living in a village or using a regional language feels this bonding social capital with the group that is speaking it. So somebody who's using, trying to use Urdu within that group would be considered as an outsider and would be considered as standoffish or trying to show off. And how when people get educated and move out of that town, small place, how the use of standard language becomes sort of like more of a habit to that person. But then whenever that person chooses either between standard or the local languages, it depends who he or she is talking to, and then this means they are negotiating different types of identities. And this is what we wanted to sort of discuss here.